Hey guys, I'm back with a returning guest, um, um, Mike from F1 Fanatics. So do you want to introduce yourself, Mike?
I can indeed, yeah. You introduced that. I'm Mike from F1 Fanatics, obviously part of a four-man team with Mark, Ash, and Stephen, also part of the channel. We're just kind of an F1 fan channel that throw a load of content at people. Obviously, if you watch Raz regularly, you know that me and him love kind of getting together and chatting F1. So incredibly grateful to be back on the channel with you, Raz. It's always brilliant to be here.
Thanks for coming on at such short notice yet again. Even though I think Will from his channel, I think he broke the record now. So, but anyway, today I thought we talk about the racing that is due to return on the 3rd of July in Austria, and sort of what we think about the calendar from then going forward. So, do you want to give me your opening thoughts?
I think the 8 races that have been selected are absolutely fantastic. A double header at Austria to start off, track that obviously Mercedes struggled at last year. Will certainly be interesting to see how they do this year. But you know, both Red Bull and Ferrari, well, more specifically Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc did well there last year. And Austria does tend to lend itself to pretty good racing, so that's a great double start. Hungary is a great classic track on the calendar. A double header at Silverstone, followed by Spain in the summer, which should be really interesting to see how that plays out. With then followed up by the classics of Spa and Monza. With those first 8 confirmed, it's really exciting, I think.
Yeah, and if it all goes ahead like we all hope it will, I think, by regulation, they could finish the championship there and then, because from what I know, that we only need 8 rounds. But realistically, how many do you think we're gonna get?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I think eight is just kind of making sure that we can have a calendar and a world championship, because for a lot of these teams, we need kind of racing to, ensure that they can get paid and prize money can be given, that sponsorships can be fulfilled and everything like that. So that's important. How many realistically we can get? Maybe as many as 16, but yeah, maybe somewhere between 14 and 16 probably.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's great that we're gonna have a season, that we're gonna get some racing done, hopefully this season. But first and foremost, is people's safety. But coming, with double headers, do you share the same sort of fear of some people that the double headers on the same tracks is just going to be processional, like that there's not going to be that much excitement?
I don't really get this argument, because races, I know they're like back-to-back weekends, so you can go, well, they know the setups and everything like that, and but it wouldn't ever be processional, because it's very rare that the same person gets the same pole position. It'd be very rare that the exact same race happens. It's going to be interesting in its own regard. It's an individual race. Yes, it might be at the same place, but it certainly feels like it'll still be interesting regardless. I don't have any fears of it being too boring. I mean, I think we're all desperate for racing. So, heck, I don't care if it's double headers. It's racing back on track.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, the most important thing is that we're gonna go racing again, and especially like the teams like that are in danger, so to speak, like the most recent and the most shocking, unfortunately, Williams. I think we need Formula One to start again to be able to sort of see what's happening to the likes of the Williams team, because I think once the racing starts and once everything is kind of back to normal as can be, I think they can make they can make the decisions better. I mean, like, they've got a better idea of what decisions can be made. I mean, for all we know is, I mean, I know it's very unlikely, but for all we know is Williams could win the first two races, which is really unlikely, but I'm just putting it out there, sort of as a hypothetical, possibility, and then they might get the sponsors, a different sponsor coming on, or so we need the on-track action to actually, for them to be able to determine what to do with the team. Do you agree with that, or?
Yeah, you're right. Everything's kind of thrown up in the air at the moment. We're really not sure what's going to happen, which I think only adds to the excitement, surely, because it's been a hell of a long time since testing. It's been a really long time since all the teams were out in Australia getting ready for the start of, well, the original start of the season. I think even the most optimistic of Williams fans, and I know you are a Williams fan, I don't think we'd see a bigger turnaround of that, but we certainly could see some mix up on the grids that we're not used to. And I still don't think, well, obviously this time of year, a lot of the teams would know a lot more about their cars, where Austria is a very interesting track to kind of start a calendar, because Australia is a really good circuit. I like it as the kind of start of the season, but Austria lends itself to more action than Melbourne does. So that certainly, for me, means that, yeah, it could be a really interesting start.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I don't expect Williams to win the two double headers. That's out of the question, but you can see my point, kind of what I was saying. Yeah. I mean, at the minute, everything is sort of up in the air, and I'm actually quite surprised that the likes of Ferrari and McLaren have actually done the decisions of what they have before any action on track has actually taken place. And yeah, I want to get onto that as well, because how do you think that is going to affect the certain races and the teams?
Well, it's an interesting one. Certainly the relationships are interesting. Sebastian Vettel loves Ferrari, especially, obviously, it's something that we've spoken about wildly before, obviously, that Schumacher being his childhood hero, moving to Ferrari to emulate him. But Sebastian Vettel, with his last season at Ferrari, let's be honest here, he is not in it for the team this year. He will be in it for number one. He knows that this is his last chance that he'll ever get to win a championship with Ferrari. So it could lead to some interesting decisions on track. With McLaren, I think it will be a lot more relaxed. I think they understand where they are in their career and getting back to the top. Carlos Sainz has got this big opportunity to drive for Ferrari in his career. And although obviously McLaren would have wanted him to stay, I think there's no love. I don't think there's any damage to their relationship. I think McLaren still will have a very positive and very good relationship with Carlos Sainz. Renault with Daniel Ricciardo, on the other hand, that potential could be the most toxic out of them.
Yeah.
Because Cyril doesn't particularly hand confrontation well, I think is the polite way of putting it. And his comments publicly about Daniel Ricciardo have been very bitter. So, it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out at Renault this year.
Yeah, I mean, I want to hear your opinion on them a bit later. But I just tell you what I think, because I think that Vettel. I mean, what does Ferrari do, right? If Carlos Sainz, I don't know, Carlos Sainz finishes the championship down in sixth position, right? And Vettel wins the championship all of a sudden.
Yeah, it looks. It's an incredibly brave decision to let a 4-time world champion go, and whatever you believe of Sebastian Vettel, where he is in his career, you might think that he's past his best and that he won't get back to it. But obviously, we know Lewis Hamilton is 35 now, but still has won championships in the past 3 years, which obviously Vettel is 3 years behind him. So, yeah, it's an incredibly bold move to announce it this early, but clearly there was a massive breakdown in relationships with Sebastian Vettel, and he wanted to leave it early so that if he does continue his time in the sport, it gives him plenty of time to secure a seat for next season.
Yeah, but there's nowhere for him to go.
Well, exactly. So he might be happy. I don't know what's going on in Sebastian Vettel's mind. I presume he maybe was like, I'd rather not race than have to play politics in a team where Charles Leclerc is clearly the future.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I was absolutely shocked. I mean, like, that Ferrari's done it that early and that sort of publicly, and I'm not convinced that Ferrari have made the right choice with Carlos Sainz, only because, not in terms of his driving, but I don't think, because let's not beat around the bush here. I mean, Leclerc is a golden boy, right? Ferrari want Leclerc to be the next Ferrari Formula One world champion. But I don't think Sainz has gone into that agreement being told to be water boy in inverted commas for Leclerc. I think there will be more trouble. There could be more trouble than is actually worth, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Charles Leclerc has quite clearly been fast-tracked to the top of Ferrari. And, just think, within the space of 3 years, with him being within Formula One, he's gone from rookie at Alfa Romeo Sauber to the second season at Ferrari to third season being Ferrari's team leader, because obviously it wouldn't make any sense. They'll say that it's equal status between Charles and Sebastian in 2020, but it doesn't make any sense for Ferrari to put as much resources behind Sebastian Vettel when Charles is quite clearly the future. And I completely agree. I think Carlos might have even publicly stated that there's nowhere on his contract that says he's a number 2 driver. He goes in as an equal to Charles Leclerc. So, yeah, I mean, if Ferrari build a car that's worthy and has potential of winning a world championship, it's certainly not going to be an easy relationship to manage. And they've noticed that last year, on track at least, that they failed to manage the relationship between Vettel and Charles Leclerc effectively at all. And that's from guys who were involved or heavily invested within Ferrari. Carlos Sainz, make no kind of second guessing about this. He's gone to Ferrari because he wants to be a Formula One world champion. He's not gone to Ferrari to support Charles Leclerc.
Yeah, I put this, I put this to you. Do you think Daniel Ricciardo has done the right? Is in the sweet spot, not taking the Ferrari seat and going for McLaren because although he clearly wanted the Ferrari seat, I think he's in a better position now with the McLaren seat, because I can't see Ferrari winning the championship. Neither can I see there not being any friction between the two of them, between Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. So whereas in McLaren, they're still building the team, and I do believe that there's going to be a few wins for McLaren, because I think the team atmosphere is going to be a lot more clear cut rather than at Ferrari. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think out of the moves in the driver market so far, Daniel Ricciardo definitely has done the best out of it. It was a choice between McLaren and Renault when he left Red Bull, and in hindsight, he probably made the wrong decision going to Renault first up out the blocks rather than going straight to McLaren. But a second chance came around for him to get the McLaren seat, and I think it's a really smart move for both parties. Obviously, Daniel Ricciardo is a proven race winner. Whether he has the ability to win a world championship, we don't know, because he's never really been in a car that was capable over the course of a season to do so.
Yeah.
But we know that he gives everything on track, and McLaren are only heading one way at the moment, and that's up. And so it just seems a really good, positive place for McLaren to be. And I imagine McLaren fans are incredibly excited at the prospect of the two of Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris together.
Would you put yourself in Daniel's shoes? Yeah.
Out of the three of Vettel, Sainz, and Ricciardo.
Put yourself in Daniel Ricciardo's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Same options. Either stay at Renault, Ferrari, or McLaren. Would you have done the same?
It's difficult because Ferrari, historically, you're always guaranteed to be around about the top, but there's a hell of a lot of inter-team politics that go that way. I think I would go for the McLaren move because I would just look at how they are as a team, the way that they seem to have a positive atmosphere. Everything seems to be falling into place. They have good management structure on and off the track. I think I would make the move definitely to McLaren if I was in Daniel Ricciardo's boots.
I would make the same move, to be honest, but I just don't get why people are always on about Ferrari being like, I know. I mean, I'm not bashing Ferrari at all, but they can't keep on. They can't keep on that. Like they can't rest themselves on their past laurels. If that makes sense, I think. Why do you think everybody is so overwhelmed with Ferrari?
Well, because it just has history, doesn't it, Ferrari? It just has the badge, and Enzo built an incredible legacy with the Ferrari team. And obviously in the early years were absolutely fantastic. But Ferrari also have to be noted as the biggest underachievers in Formula One, which sounds stupid, seeming as they're the most successful team in F1 history. But not winning a drivers' championship between 1979 and 2000, and I think in the 80s not winning a constructors' world championship between, I think it was 82 and 1999. It's there. And then after the Schumacher years, Kimi Raikkonen won the championship in 07. They won the constructors, I believe, in 08, and it's just been years of underachieving and not building the right cars, not getting on top of the regulations. They certainly feel like, they don't underachieve. But as a driver, to drive for Ferrari, there's a certain aura about it. But you also go, the amount of money that they invest in the sport, it's only a matter of time when they'll get something right and be a competitive outfit. So you always know that you're going to have a pretty good shot of being in and around the World Championship if you're driving for Ferrari.
I'm going to put this to you.
I'm ready.
Change team principles. Put Toto Wolff in charge of Ferrari and Binotto in charge of Mercedes. My argument is that Mercedes with Binotto in charge would be where Ferrari is now, and with Toto Wolff in charge at Ferrari, I reckon they would have won. They would have done what Mercedes has done over the last 6 years.
Yeah, I think Toto Wolff is that good. I think he's easily the best team principal on the grid, and you could certainly make a very strong argument that he's the best team principal in F1 history. Certainly in modern F1, he understands people so well, and that he just has a real integral understanding of how to build an effective and operating team. Binotto, it's maybe a little harsh to judge so far, because we have to remember, although he's been at Ferrari for years and years and years, it was his first year as a team principal, and it's difficult moving up to that top spot, because every decision you make is under scrutiny. You have to answer the press to all the kind of rumors and everything. There's a whole load of pressure that comes with it. But Binotto isn't in Toto Wolff's league, and I agree. Toto, although Mercedes have so many good factors within that team, they have the amazing talent of Lewis Hamilton. They have the top strategists, they have the designers. Absolutely brilliant. Just the whole team, the whole Brackley team, are a fantastic outfit. But Toto brings it all together. He's the glue that brings out the best in all of them. So Toto in Ferrari, I think certainly would be doing a better job than what Mattia Binotto's doing.
And one other thing to throw into the mix. There's only been one person from what I know that has left Mercedes since they've started dominating, and that was Petty Lowe. Nobody's ever. I don't think anyone left the team, and I think that's absolutely incredible. And I think that's what makes the team. I think that's down to total worth.
Well, I think everyone's just happy, aren't they? You look at Mercedes and they're just smiles all round. I mean, it's easy to be happy and smiling when you're winning everything in the sport, admittedly. And, if Mercedes hadn't been as successful as what they'd been, would they have hung around the same? You don't know. But yeah, you're right. Like the fact that no one seems to leave Mercedes, other than obviously the big notable change would be Nico Rosberg. But that was out of he gave everything to win a world title. He had nothing left to prove. Um, yeah, Mercedes, it just looks an incredible environment to work in. And if I was, in a position that I was a gifted aerodynamicist or, anything to do with Mercedes, I would want to join that team. They would definitely be them, and probably Racing Point would be the two teams on the grid that you go, they look a really excellent outfit. Red Bull as well, actually. I think Red Bull there, but Mercedes are by far and away, and why they've been so successful, the best team.
Before we get on back to the proposed calendar, one last question before we do. I don't know whether you've heard, but apparently Total Worth is helping the Williams team to look for investors. In fact, I think he's purchased 10%. And I mean, if I was in Claire Williams' shoes and Frank Williams' shoes, I would. I know it's not possible because he's on Mercedes, so that couldn't happen. But I would love to have him as an investor. Because he understands he's been with the team before, and he understands the value of the team. I just think he's genuinely I can see him as the next sort of the next FIA president.
Yeah, I think what he does is definitely incredible for the grid. And there's just certain moves, the way that he links in with the grid, the way that he kind of links in with different teams. It looks like he's making kind of maneuvers a bit like Bernie Ecclestone did in the 70s before, and then obviously going on in the 80s to go from there. I think one of the top roles in the FIA certainly, I reckon, appeals to Toto Wolff. I don't think Mercedes is his end game in the sport. I think his end game is the overall ruling of the sport. And how Ross Brawn has transitioned obviously to a high position in the FIA. I can definitely see the presidency being something that Toto Wolff seeks out in the future.
Yeah, but coming back onto the proposed, the races that is starting on the 3rd of. The weekend is actually starting on the 3rd of July with all the free practices. Do you think that the drivers are going to be rusty?
Absolutely. They can't not be rusty, because there's much simulator and stuff they've done on games and everything. There's no substitute for race practice. And also, this is going to be the longest that any of them have gone, I would imagine, unless they've had break seasons. Probably Esteban Ocon is, but you've still driven and tested race cars in that time. I think this is probably the longest ever time that any of them would have gone without being in a Formula One car, which, yeah, naturally, it's going to be, or a racing car at least, it's going to be tough and it's going to be rusty, which could lead to interesting racing, because they're not really getting any testing. It's just pretty much free
Yeah.
practice and away we go.
But don't forget, I can see where you're coming from, and I agree with you. But I don't know whether you know that Ferrari and Mercedes have already done a private test with, I think it was the 2018 cars. So that's why I think they're not as rusty as we might expect.
Yeah, they're not going to be completely rusty, definitely not. And there's been other drivers who have driven, I think, F3 cars as well. I think Lando Norris was out in an F3 car. So yeah, obviously they're starting now to kind of get back within race cars, but still, yeah, I suppose the competing element as well. This is the longest they've been probably in their entire racing careers without being in a competitive race, which, yeah, they'll kind of, there's not going to be a massive gap. Like, there's not going to be like absolute chaos and carnage.
Yeah.
But they're not going to be as sharp as what they were as if the race had started in Australia.
So looking at the calendar as it stands at the minute, with 8 races that they've selected that we know of so far, are you happy with the way they're proposing to work it, or do you have any gremlins with it, or are you just happy that the racing goes ahead?
I'm happy that the racing goes ahead. I think to comment on the actual runnings and how it's going to work, there are people paid far more money than me involved in this that I can't see F1. There's obviously an element of risk. There wasn't ever going to be risk-free racing, but I certainly believe that they've done this with the strongest possibility of, you know, things going ahead as planned, because, you know, they couldn't risk putting all this in place for it suddenly to be at high risk of being cancelled. There must be kind of certain assurances in place, and the plan must be pretty solid. And for the circuits themselves, I think they're great choices. Austria, you know, like I said, maybe favours Red Bull, have been stronger there in the past couple of years. Silverstone probably favours Mercedes more. If Ferrari still have the engine dominance of last year, then obviously Monza and Spa are going to favour them. And then Spain in the heat could throw up a spanner in the works, because they're not used to being on that track at those sort of temperatures if it is a scorcher in the middle of August. And Hungary is, again, it's a bit of a neutral track. Red Bull and Mercedes both did well there.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, I mean, I agree with you 100%. I'm happy that racing goes ahead. I mean, from my general point of view, I mean, it doesn't feel like we had quarantine, we had the COVID-19, because I've been busier than ever, because I've had Tomo, I've had Josh, I've had you on, and I've had Will on, and I had Joe on. Yeah, so I've been massively busy, and in terms of subscribers and the watch time, my channel has blown up, sort of thing. So I've really enjoyed it. But as I said, I can't wait for the racing to go ahead. One thing I will say though, I'm a bit worried in terms of all these triple headers that are happening and all these double headers, because, you know, they said they was never gonna do triple headers ever again when they tried it in, was it in, yeah,
2018, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm a bit worried about that.
Look, there's no denying that the teams are going to be exhausted by the end of this. I think it is going to put a lot of physical strain on the teams, but I think they know what they're going into, and I think everyone's behind it because everyone needs racing back for the survival. It's a one-off. It's not like this is going to be happening every year. We hope with flare-ups of the disease, you never know what's around the corner. But in theory, none of this is going to happen again. It's a one-off season. I think people can mentally prepare themselves and be prepared to give everything just for this season, on the basis that we need to adapt to the situation. It's an unprecedented situation that the teams and the sport finds itself in.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I mean, I'm hoping, and I've got no medical evidence. I'm not a medical person, but there's a slight possibility that by the end of the year they would have found something to treat it, and then we can go back to the way life was, or but my idea was to actually, when this first started, was to combine the 2020 season and the 2021 season. Do you think that would have worked, or do you think we are in a better place now, with 8 races that have been confirmed, or do you think we should have done one big season like the football, like the 2020, and then combine it with 2021?
I definitely feel like this is better, because then only one season is technically affected from the coronavirus, as opposed to if you had one mega season, then you would be starting to see some sort of burnout. It's a much larger commitment that you're asking people to kind of put strain on. How would could teams last without a prize pot? Even though it's going to be a smaller prize pot at the end of the 2020 season, it's still going to be some sort of money distributed to the teams. Could they have lasted a whole year, 2 years, or a year's gap in prize money? Probably not. I don't think the sponsorship money would have worked at all. It would have been interesting to see how it panned out, but I think they're very much going, make the most of what we can in 2020, and in 2021 business is back as normal.
I can see your point, actually, especially with the likes of Williams, but I've read and heard some other YouTubers saying, and other journalists saying that that's because it's a shorter season, it devalues the season.
I think people say that because they've known no other seasons like that. If you were alive in the 1950s and 1960s, when the seasons were a lot shorter, do you say that Juan Manuel Fangio isn't a worthy 5-time world champion because they didn't have as many F1 races? That would be the argument to that.
I would say they're mad.
Yeah. It's just because you got used to so many races in a calendar doesn't take away any value. There's still races competing. In fact, it probably increases tension because every race matters more, because there's not as much points up for grabs, so therefore you really have to hit the ground running.
I'm not a great fan of all this reverse grid and stuff. Do you agree?
I know a lot of people kind of want it to be different, and it's worked in other series and everything, but that's F1 is a sport, if there was a time to try it, it probably would be now. I guess what they were saying is if they had reverse grids, it was technically more racing because it would be reverse grid qualifying races, which would then determine, and they wouldn't actually be any points awarded from it. But I think Toto Wolff said they don't want, or Chase Carey said they didn't want the sport to kind of be gimmicky. And it does feel a bit gimmicky. In other series, I think it goes with the people who want reverse grids see F1 as a driver series only, where F1 isn't a driver series only. It's the most kind of the best manufactured cars and best engineered cars coupled with the best drivers. And it's almost like making a fantasy team in F1 or football, whatever. You can't go out and pick all the best players. You have to make some compromises in some areas. And that's, I think, the beauty of F1, where reverse grids, yeah, the drivers are a brilliant part of F1, but they're not the only part of F1. And they work better in stuff like F2, which sole purpose is to find the best drivers to promote into F1.
Yeah, exactly. So we're not... I think we can safely say we're not a fan of reverse grids. Let's know that we've talked about the proposed season. I want to get your opinions on a couple of things. We've talked about the driver changes. We talked about the calendar, but let's talk about let's talk about the scandal that happened in Formula E
with Daniel Abt.
Yes.
Oh, okay. We'll have an interesting one on this one. So my thoughts on the Daniel Abt one is there's a combination of factors. Daniel Abt, let's make no bones about this. He's a nice guy. He's a competent driver, but he doesn't set the world alight at Audi. He hasn't set the world alight in Formula E. He's not one of the top talents within the sport. I think Audi were looking to make way for him anyway. And there'd already been rumours that they were looking at kind of moving him on at the end of the 2020 season or 2019-20 season anyway. So Daniel Abt just gave Audi the perfect excuse. I think it's one that on the face value, if it was just purely sacked because of what happened in the race, then that's wrong. But I think there's a lot more underlying issues here that Audi basically were like, right, this is the perfect excuse. We were looking to get rid of him anyway, but this is a cheaper way of getting rid of him. And you also got to remember Audi have pulled out a DTM. I don't know if any of their drivers will fill the seat or anything, but they've got a load of guys who are attached to them in DTM who are now looking for a race seat. But I don't know if it's guys outside of that, maybe in endurance racing that they'll bring in to replace Daniel Abt. But I think he was going anyway. This was just the perfect excuse for them.
Yeah, I'm not proclaiming to be an expert in Formula E. In fact, I'm a lot like Tomo is, where I've watched the first one, the first ever Formula E race, and then I've watched a couple of the off Formula E races, but I did actually watch for the first time ever the replay of the last virtual Formula, the virtual Formula E as well. Now, and I did actually make a video about the whole scandal thing. In what I said was I thought that he got the punishment was just justified, or a punishment would be justified, but not to lose to be kicked out of a race seat. And I think if they did want to get rid of him, they should have just be straight with him and should have just told him, rather than using this as a sort of catalyst, especially because some German tabloids have said, "Oh, cheat a Daniel Abt," you know what I mean? Like they've been quite harsh about it, and I know for a fact that it actually got him. He was devastated about it. And in terms of Formula E, it could have worked a treat, because that would have made the virtual scene a lot more coverage. But I think they sort of shot themselves in the foot now, because a lot of drivers have said, "Oh, we're not gonna participate in virtual racing anymore because of what you done to Daniel Abt." So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely bang on here. I agree. Audi have kind of done the dirty on him here, and they should have just look. If you don't want a driver anymore, that's not an issue. I know there's complex and politics within it, because the app name is inherently linked with Audi, and so it would have been difficult to displace him. But nobody was, after this happened, everyone was like, you know what, that's wrong. But the way he explained it, whether you think, it was a nice way of him promoting and seeing a virtual racer against real racers as well, look, regardless, I feel sorry for the bloke, because he's lost his job, and it's not nice when anyone loses their job. He maybe should have been open and honest with Audi about it from the start, which, look, he's made a poor decision, but it wasn't a poor decision that was worth losing his job over. And I don't think anyone was calling for him to be sacked in his real life racing seat. Audi escalated that far too much, and I think you're right. It damaged the Formula E virtual thing. I think F1 is the only virtual kind of Grand Prix that have come out positive from this break. They've taken it as a bit of fun. They've had a relaxed atmosphere, and they haven't taken themselves too seriously. Where the ones like NASCAR, IndyCar, and Formula E, who've all taken it really serious and a really kind of competitive championship with getting their big drivers in, there's all been controversy in all three of those. And they've kind of shot themselves in the foot with this one.
I mean, I actually had somebody commenting on my video saying, isn't the virtual F Formula E, isn't that part of the real Formula E championship? Yeah, and I said no. Yeah, because I mean, I made the same. I can remember in one of our previous conversations, I actually suggested exactly that to you, didn't I? But I think that what happened with Daniel Abt, or I think that just proved that you shouldn't treat sim racing as serious as you should treat real life racing.
Well, I think I agree with you there. But I think sim racers, so guys who are dedicated competing sim racers, that is more than okay for it to be taken seriously, because that's what they're competing in, that's what they've signed up for. The professional drivers who don't have any real interest of competing in the virtual world other than for a bit of fun or to do it because, you know, sponsors may want to do it, yeah, they certainly shouldn't be taken seriously. And like I said, the way F1 have done it, I think has probably been the perfect way.
I mean, I totally agree with you. I mean, if I was to sign up for being a sim racer and actually earn money from it, then I would take it seriously. But as you said, Formula One did it best, where they get, you know, because none as far as I know, none of the teams pressured their drivers to be in it. They just done it for a bit of fun, and I really did enjoy watching it, even though it was the first time, you know, even though it was my first time sort of thing. But as I said, I would never take it as serious as the real race.
Oh, absolutely, and yeah, I think the way that they've brought guests in, so they kind of boost the popularity of F1 in terms of that, like you said, not pressuring drivers into it, making them compete out of choice, but also, you know, the stuff that the race have done. You know, I'll happily admit I'm not a huge fan of virtual racing. It doesn't get me as excited as what a real race does, but I believe it's a market that attracts a lot of people. There's a lot of people who do have an interest in it and take it really seriously. So therefore, in that place, it deserves a place in its world. And what F1 have done have highlighted it, boosted their profile within the virtual world, gained some big stars within it. And then also when real racing gets back and then the virtual racing stars return to action in the F1 esports scene, I think it probably is only going to benefit from this.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So what are your final thoughts about the 2020 season when we get going in Austria?
I cannot wait to see what happens in this season. It's going to be absolutely brilliant, I'm sure. I just because I watched the IndyCar race over the weekend, and that was brilliant. You know, even though that wasn't the best of races, it was just fantastic to see real life drivers and race cars out on track again. And you know, it was that's the feeling. It's just going to be relief, I think, that F1 is back on track, and whatever happens, happens. I'm just going to be, you know, excited to see a return to action, and I hope we have a brilliant kind of title fight, and hopefully a few surprises in there as well.
Okay, and finally, who do you think? Two more questions, right?
Yep.
First of all, who do you think is going to get the Renault seat?
Sensible option, Valtteri Bottas. Option I think probably will happen is Fernando Alonso.
Interesting. If Valtteri Bottas gets it, who would you put in the Mercedes?
George Russell, without a doubt. I think Mercedes can't afford to hang around. Obviously, Lewis is getting to the end of his career. They can't afford to sit around having their really good youngster in George Russell not in a top seat for too long, considering that Verstappen's established at Red Bull and Leclerc is establishing himself at Ferrari.
And the next question is linking in to my final question. who do you think, if George Russell is going to get moved up to Mercedes, who do you think is going to get the Williams seat?
Depends, actually, this one on F2 performances. I've heard Sergei Sorokin being spoken to again as a potential. Obviously, with Williams' financial state, we know Sorokin comes with financial backing. I feel it was a bit harsh done by. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing Sorokin make a return to Formula One. I think he was definitely a good addition to the grid and certainly deserves another opportunity. My gut feeling tells me Dan Ticktum. I think he's the most talented out of the three on track. Obviously, his well-documented temperament. But if he can settle down, proven that he's ready to move forward and he looks more settled in the Williams environment and he gets the results he needs to get the super license points, I think he will beat Jack Aitken and Sergei Sorokin to it.
Okay. I think if Dan Ticktum was to get the seat, I reckon Williams would need a sponsor with some big deep pockets, because I'm not having to go at Dan Ticktum, but I think he unless he can curb his sort of temperament. I've got nothing against him being a bit wild, but I'm thinking about the Williams financial state. I think it would cost them potentially more than what it can give them, unless he really stops crashing so much.
I don't think he really. Obviously, the big notable incidents with Dan is the Macau GP incident, and obviously the one where he was in British F4, where under safety car he crashed into his title contender. Those are the big ones. I think a lot of the things with Dan Ticktum and the resentment towards him is his attitude and the things that he said, and he's kind of built up this reputation that he's not a very pleasant lad to work with. He's obviously got to dispel those rumours. He looks like he's settled in at Williams really well. Things seem to go positive, but obviously he hasn't been on the racetrack since that partnership with Williams has started. I don't think crashing is the issue. I think it really is the temperament of how Dan will work in a team, and I think he's learned his lessons, it sounds like, at least.
Yeah, but the very final question, and I've got to ask you this because I did a whole video with Will about this, and that is, I think you've seen you've read the news, and I must say I was devastated. Because I thought it was a done deal. I thought Williams are going to be sold, 100%. But from what if you read between the lines, I think it's a part sale more than 100% sale, because I can't understand why, if it was 100% sale, I can't understand why Claire Williams would be so happy about it. That is what makes me think it's a part sale rather than a 100% sale. But what first of all, what were your reactions about it, and what do you think that this means for the Williams team?
Well, I think, when it first came out, obviously it was big breaking news and it was a big shock, and obviously the big headline grabbers were Williams are up for sale. But like you said, if you read what Claire said, it to me didn't sound like she feared for the long-term viability of the team. Obviously, as much as anyone, we don't know what the future holds and what kind of financial goes. But obviously, since the sale of their Williams Advanced Engineering, the refinancing process with Michael Latifi was spoken about. Since then, they've been going through a restructuring process for a while, and it didn't seem like it was a shock to Claire when she was in the interviews. It was very kind of, it was very measured. It was very controlled. Obviously, she's the public persona. She's the public face of Williams nowadays. So she has to put on a positive spin of things. But it genuinely, I think, like you said, it feels like it's a part sale first. It might be a full sale, but she seems confident about the Williams name staying in F1. And like she said, Frank and hers priority has always been about the team, the engineering, and everything about that, and the people who work for Williams come first. And this is all about securing their long-term future within the sport. And clearly, we just have to tell from since they last won the world title in 1997 that it's been a steady decline for Williams since then. And it hasn't. There's been obviously moments of highs with, as recently as, wasn't it, the 2014-15 season, they finished third or fourth in the constructors.
Third.
Third, you see. So it hasn't been all doom and gloom, but they need to change the way they operate, because they aren't competing with the teams on a consistent basis where historically they have done through the 80s and the 90s. So if this is the change that it needs to Williams being a competitive outfit again, I think it's only a positive thing for the team.
What percentage would you be happy with?
It would probably, to make anyone interest, have to be at least a 50% sale of the company or team. And I imagine that 50% will probably go to Michael Latifi.
Interesting, because I said to Will, and I stick by that, 70-30. Like I want the Claire and I want her dad Frank to stay in the team, because half of the value of, maybe not half, but you know what I'm saying, like half the value of the team is the name. If the name goes, it might just be, you might just talk about, I don't know, it would just be called Joe Blocks.
Yeah.
And I think it needs somebody that understands that I think it needs somebody who understands that family connection to the team, and I want Claire and Frank to be involved, because the last thing I'm going to say about this is that I believe that Frank Williams is alive today because of his Formula One team. If he loses his Formula One team, he will die sooner or later.
I mean, that's a pretty dark thought to end in. I definitely feel like it's something that has driven him forward and has given his life meaning, especially after losing Ginny as his wife as well. It was that must have been incredibly devastating for all that she had done for him. I think anyone who comes in and buys Williams is smart, because I don't think anyone wants to come in and buy that team and be the guy, the woman, whoever buys it, who got rid of the name out of the Williams name out of F1. I don't think anyone wants that tagline to them. The worst I can see would be Williams Latifi Racing, or say something like that. If say Michael Latifi wins, it would be a double-barreled name or a joint name rather than just Williams. But I could see Williams' name, regardless of what happens, staying unless unless Williams decide to leave completely and say someone like Pantera, who are looking to get into the sport, buy their slot on the grid.
I can't see that happening, but as always, Mike, it's been a pleasure, and I mean, we did go off topic quite a bit, but
as always, Raz, as always.
I think I'm going to call this one the Unplanned Chat Reloaded or something.
I think that's probably a very good version of it. We always get carried away in these chats, Raz. That's for sure.
Yeah, but thank you for coming on, and I'll let you know when this is live, and I'm hoping you're all right, and I'll speak to you again soon, mate. Bye for now.
Yeah, Raz, it's always been an absolute pleasure with these things, and I always love coming onto the channel. And if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed to Raz on F1. What's your target? 1,000 by the end of the year. We've got to make that happen, surely.
Yes. Yes. And if I tell you what, if you get there before me, or that there's no there's no rivalry, but we are best. You're one of my best YouTube buddies. We are like brothers, so there's no rivalry. But I would like to come close to your numbers rather sooner rather than later. So it's been a pleasure, and your support always means the world to me. And so enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll speak to you soon.
Speak to you soon, Raz.
Bye for now. Bye.
Bye.